Hi, welcome to Continuing Care with Sadie. Today I have a guest who is from Long Beach, California. Woohoo! I have Carla Cohen, whose work sits right at the center of what season 2 is all about. Practice, culture, interaction, and what it truly means to lead from clarity rather than pressure. Carla Cohen is a leadership performance coach, speaker, and business strategist who empowers ambitious women to step into soul aligned leadership and peak performance. Her work helps women attract clients, income, and lasting success, not through overworking or forcing outcomes, but through alignment, emotional intelligence, and clarity. Carla works with leaders who look successful from the outside but feel invisible underneath, working harder than necessary, under earning despite their talent, or carrying more than their share of responsibility. She helps them identify the deeper patterns driving these experiences so they can shift how they show up in high pressure environments. Her approach blends leadership strategy with emotional and energetic intelligence. We all need some of that. Helping clients respond rather than react, communicate with authority, and lead from a grounded, centered place. Carla serves as a regional director for Global Women's Club, supporting women entrepreneurs and executives as they grow their business and leadership capacity through aligned strategy and emotional intelligence decision making. What I love about Carla's work and why she's such a powerful guest for this season is that she doesn't separate leadership from humanity. She doesn't separate performance from well being. She doesn't separate success from alignment. She understands how that we lead is shaped by what we practice, the cultures we build, the interactions we have, and the clarity we hold within ourselves. Carla, I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. Oh, wow. Well, we all need someone like that in our lives, especially as women. And it's in the UK. It's coming up to World Women's International World Women's Day, 8th of March. So let's bring that on as well. So when I do these conversations, my listeners know I always start off with the first section being about practice and culture and understanding what's at the root of what you do. So, Carla, your work is deeply rooted in the idea that leadership isn't just a role, it's a practice. It's something we cultivate daily and it shapes the culture around us. When you think about leadership as a practice, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think for me, especially in light of, I've just written a new book about it. One of the things is really aligning, being in alignment from the minute that you walk into the room as a leader. So, and recognizing when you're not. So, most leaders, if there's a project, they come in with an agenda about what needs to be done. Say they're having a meeting with their team and, they come in and they've got this agenda, and they may not take the time to actually look and see what's going on in the room. Like, literally, the old saying, "Read the room."
Read the
This is
room.
for
Yeah.
real, right? Like, really read the room.
Yeah.
So, not just checking in with what's noticing what's going on in the energy in the room around you, but also noticing what you're bringing into the party, so to speak. So, how are you because your presence, people will entrain to your energetics. So if you're out of whack and you're not centered, you're not in your body, you haven't taken the time.
Uh
I
huh.
recommend that leaders take that moment to, especially as females, we need to really take the time. We're so used to giving and taking care of others, and it's kind of in
Yeah.
our DNA. Like, what happens when you take the time to, like, ground, put both
Yeah.
feet on the ground. take a moment to make sure that you're seated in your body. Take a moment to make sure your shoulders are not up in your ears. Take a couple of deep breaths, and then from that place, see if you
Huh.
can connect around the room with your eyes
Yeah.
and see what's going on with the people around you. If you come from that place of presence, then
Yeah.
they will start to drop into their bodies and be more present with you as well. And so then you start to have a conversation from a different perspective. And the other
Yeah.
thing is noticing if the room is really feeling off. And instead of, charging through anyway, like, what if you just ask, like, hey, I'm noticing that I'm feeling some tension in the room right now, or I'm feeling some anxiety because a lot of times people are coming into those meetings, they're afraid of the politics, right? They're afraid of being rejected. They're afraid their question might be stupid. They're afraid of being,
Mm.
humiliated. They're afraid their idea may not be good enough, or maybe they're thinking, "Hey, I'm not even gonna be seen," right? That's the other piece. Like, will they even recognize me long enough that I can get a word in edgewise? So
Yeah.
there's all this stuff going on inside of people when they come into the meetings that they bring with them. And our job as feminine leaders in the feminine model that I talk about,
Yeah.
I is to drop into that place like I was talking about and really check in with the room so that everybody starts to really be present and can feel included and seen and heard and not judged for what they're bringing to the table.
Yeah. Really, really good point. Especially, I love the point about, do you know what? Ask if something feels off because people forget that when anxiety takes over, logic goes out the window. So that's a good one. What are the daily or weekly practices that help leaders stay aligned rather than overwhelmed?
I'm a big proponent of taking some time to for yourself during the course of the week, hopefully daily, where you are doing a check-in with yourself, checking to make sure that you feel rested, that you're hydrating. I mean, these are simple things, right? Eating food that you know doesn't put you in a food coma, or little things like that. But
I'll
also,
just hydrate now.
yeah, and just, breathing, like taking time to breathe and literally, again, checking in with your body, like how because here's the thing, the place that I come from with, with my 30 years of experience in, the healing arts as well, I bring that into my business strategy with leaders is people don't recognize that there's all kinds of emotions firing in their body all the time, and they're not
Mm,
taking time. Those are messages, right? So
yeah,
that pain in your shoulder is not just a pain in your shoulder. It's maybe telling you that you feel obligated and you don't want to participate in this particular activity that's coming up. That a reason that you suddenly have, oh my God, I feel so congested and I can't breathe, might be that you've got some grief coming up before a meeting or an interaction. So taking the time when you're at home to, and sometimes you have to do this in the workplace, like take a moment and I had a friend who, she was not a client, but she would have been a great client. Her contract with, the people that she worked for was that she had 20 minutes of yoga in her contract every day. So, no everybody knew not to disturb her so that she was
mm,
taking care of herself, and then she
I
had a
love
pretty
that.
intense job, and then she would go back to
Mm,
work. So things like that, having a pet can be very calming to the central nervous system, and there's also, like, I teach my clients exercises to help self-regulate.
yeah,
So, because when we're feeling off or anxious or in fear or anxiety or whatever it is, that means it's showing you on some level if you're not sleeping well, your digestion's
yeah,
off, maybe
yeah.
you're not eliminating the way you should. All of those things tell you that something's off in your central nervous system as well. And so I will walk my clients through exercises to help them re-regulate so that they are not in that coming from that stress place.
So, following on from everything you so well said, you work with women who often are carrying a lot professionally and emotionally. So, what cultural patterns do you see showing up again and again?
I think that, I mean, it's funny, it doesn't seem to matter whether they're from California or New York or, which is like the East Coast versus the West Coast here in the United States, right? It really doesn't seem to matter about, those things. But what I do see in terms of what I see in terms of cultural is a little bit more drilled down than that, which is literally like what's your ancestry? I was born in a Jewish family, but we didn't follow
Right.
Jewish traditions, right?
Yeah.
We didn't do anything particularly, except for maybe the high holidays do something. So we were kind
Yeah.
of aware of it. But that within my culture, there's certain things that I was taught without thinking about them, right? Like it's valued that women are educated in Jewish religion, right? So I was taught knowledge is really important and learning those things are cultural, right? Also some limitations about how far, what kind of um, occupations I should consider or not consider because,
Yeah.
based on mine. And I kind of see that in other groups here. It's like we have a huge in the United States, well, where I am around here, we have, pretty big Asian community, pretty big Iranian community, pretty big, there's
Okay.
all these different,
Oh,
and within
wow.
each of those, you can see that the traditions that they came down through their culture
Mm,
are more impacting them than what's the culture in the organizations, if that makes sense.
it does. I mean, professionally and emotionally, what do you see showing up again and again for these women?
Well, it's kind of the same thing, women are women across the board. So I will see these incredibly accomplished, beautiful women with every credential you could probably imagine, still thinking that they're still suffering from things like imposter syndrome, questioning their decisions, debating over holding themselves back from things that might help them, right?
So
That's the
we're
biggest.
talking about shrinking.
Shrinking and also just stopping, like, literally not moving forward because not recognizing that it's even an emotional, pattern in there that's keeping them from taking the next step. So one of the things that
Okay.
I do is like when I'm working with a leader, for example, I'm not just gonna look at, okay, let's get you from A to B. It's gonna be like, what's the underneath there? Down underneath the surface that's keeping you from moving to A to B? And then my job is to help address that, right? Help them
Yeah.
figure out what that is. And so that comes back to kind of what we said at the very beginning, which is learning how to listen to your own body. I'm a meditator. I've been practicing
Yeah.
meditation
Yeah.
pretty I think I've missed once in 40 something years.
Oh, wow.
The first thing I do, I get up, I shower, I do some, spiritual practice, I meditate. And what happens with meditation is you start to be able to look at yourself from the outside in a non-critical way more easily, so more effortlessly. So, in other words, I can look at myself as a witness and go, okay, well, wow, notice I didn't move forward on this and I didn't do this and this. And okay, so now that I see that I'm doing that, what changes do I want to make? Or what's the emotion that's stopping me from moving from A to B? So, within cultures, it's the same thing across the board. If I can get down to there's emotional barriers that have been placed in women that we don't even question. And part of the work I've done is I've seen that, look, it comes from gestational things, it comes from family, it comes from generational things, it comes from environment, it comes from traumas that we didn't even necessarily recognize as a trauma. So all of those imprints are affecting us in terms of how we move forward or don't move forward.
So, based on what you've just said, really clearly said, how do you help leaders shift the culture around them and not just their behavior? How do you do that?
Okay, so it does start with their behavior. You know? So if, the difference between me coming into a room and breathing and coming into a place of presence, I'm setting I've subconsciously impacted the people in the room. Just the fact that I've walked in, I've changed my posture, right? I settled into myself. I'm
Yeah.
standing I'm grounded. I'm breathing. I'm looking around the room. That very just doing those simple things right there starts to change. Another thing you can do, depending on the situation, like if you're not the leader in the room, but you're the leader in the room sitting in the chair. You know, you're not physically the one in front of the room, but, you can if you're experiencing a dynamic in the room that doesn't feel good to you, you could literally get up and move, positions if possible, move into a different
That's, yeah,
chair.
that's how do they? change their environment. That's where what I'm trying to get at is
Yeah.
like, can you ask for the lighting to be dimmed? Is there anything you can do, you know,
Well,
with
it may not
regards
be
to
so it may not be so easy to, like, turn off lights or whatever. It might be, like, the middle but generally speaking, moving positions changes a lot. Because depending on where you sit in the room, and I could do a whole thing just on that. You're gonna receive the information differently and have a different feeling about the what's going on in the meeting. Depending on whether you're in the back of the room, the right side of the room,
yeah,
the left side of the room, the middle of the
yeah,
room, you know? So first thing is to look at that. Second thing is what's going on with your body language. Like, how can you shift your because even if you're, the leader's shifting and you're not, you're sitting there with your arms crossed and your legs crossed, that's going to change things too. So you need to like, how can you soften? That's really the question. Like, can I be more soft? Is there something inside of me that can let go? And then the other question to yourself is, is there a way that I could perceive this particular situation differently than how I am right now? Because that's a choice. How we receive information, our attitude it can be a conscious choice.
yes, yes. What does a healthy, soul aligned leadership culture look and feel like to you, Carla?
Well, what I like to use is this. If you think of um, a composer walking in and there's a band, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
the orchestra. And
Okay.
the difference between, in an unhealthy culture, there's, maybe the tuba is playing and maybe the drums, and the composer's trying to conduct everybody and nobody's playing, right? In a healthy culture, you have every instrument, the oboe, the violin, the piano,
Yeah.
everybody, it becomes more like a symphony than,
Yeah.
and we move
And
from
harmonious.
harmonious, exactly. We move from staccato, which is very abrupt and quick and to a more softer kind of energy where things are more aligned, fully aligned. So the feeling in the room is going from air that feels very thick and isn't moving to being out on the bow of a boat and having the wind blow against your face and being okay with the sea chopping underneath you. Uh,
Right. Okay.
um, it's really, it is a little bit hard to talk about how it feels, but the difference is that that thickness that was once there is no longer so palpable. As a matter of fact, it just completely dissipates, and it goes from this, I don't know, I wanna say stiff and, slow moving, like, think of somebody moving through trying to walk through cement, right? To this place where there's so much excitement palpable in the room because everybody feels included and it's electric. So going from cement and sludge to electric is a good way to
Yes.
describe
That
it.
that that actually sounds really good. Yes. I want some of that. Atmosphere. Yes. Definitely. We're going to go on to section 2. Thank you for all that. It's been insightful, definitely. We want to talk about again, season 2 is the how, which you've mentioned a lot, which is great. But we want to look at the interaction and emotional intelligence. Now, my listeners know I'm really, really interested in emotional intelligence. Um, in fact, I think it's vital for leaders of the future to actually have and develop. So, this season is also about interaction and how we communicate, how we relate, as well as the emotional intelligence that shapes the spaces we lead. So, my first question for this section is what roles does emotional intelligence play in the way leaders interact with their teams, clients, and environments? So, let's start with teams first.
First of all, I wanna say, I think there's a third I think emotional intelligence, and again, I'm certified in, all these different levels of that, right? That's one of my specialties. But the more I've dove into it, I feel like, it doesn't address energetic intelligence, which I think you need intellectual intelligence, you need emotional intelligence, and you need energetic intelligence to be a really good leader. So going back to emotional intelligence and coming from a leader, it's like being able to be present for each of the people that you're working with in your organization, taking the time
Yeah.
to develop relationship with them and understand what is their gift, like what's their brain talent, and what is it that what are their particular things that you need to consider when you're working with that individual? Because we do have in emotional intelligence, we actually have different brain personalities. And so, and I that's a very in-depth thing to not I don't wanna start diving into that
No.
because we may get lost. But understanding that, like a man who for let's just say I'll just draw an example from like the real world. There's a man I work with. He's a brilliant technologist. He's very good at IT. There's nobody I've ever seen that writes programs like he does, very creative. When it comes to speaking with him, I my way of working is I prefer to sit down and have a conversation and say, "What do you need?" His preference is, send me a questionnaire and I'll fill in the questions and then a survey and then I'll get it back to you, right? Two very, very different styles. And so as a leader, we need to understand that each person has a different way that's their strength for communicating and what is their style and what do they need in order to perform the best they can and be the best part of the team.
Yeah. Okay. So you've also mentioned individuals as well as teams,
Yeah.
but it sounds like it's a lot more complicated when you're working with a team, I guess. And what about environments? That was the last one. So going back to the question, what role does emotional intelligence play in the way leaders interact with and we've done teams and clients. Now we want to know about environments.
Well, I think it goes back to something I was saying earlier around employees. So if you come in to any meeting or any situation and you see yourself more as the host of the situation instead of the participant, not the leader
Right.
necessarily, if you're
Yeah.
not the leader
You're getting
per
over
se,
that imposter syndrome.
right,
I love
right.
that.
Yeah, and just
Brilliant.
come in and see the room, act as if you are the host bringing all these people together. How would you greet them as a host? Well, you'd go around and try to connect with people,
Yeah.
hopefully, visually,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
again, going back to what I was saying, where we we'll come in and we've got all this stuff in our way, like, and we're not recognizing it as emotions, right? It might be fear, it might be anxiety, it might be, whatever flavor it is. And allowing yourself to have that feeling in your body, like, okay, I'm feeling like I'm afraid to, oh, I'm afraid of rejection. Maybe that's
Yeah.
the first obvious thing, right? What if they don't? What if they don't? But I come from what if they do, right? So instead of what if they don't welcome me, what if they do? What if they aren't what if they are judge and even if there might be 15 people that you connect with, okay, so 2 or 3 of them are, jerks, maybe, that
Yeah.
you can't there's nothing you
But
could
you're
do
not
about
going to
it.
go and sit next to them, are you?
Right,
That's the
right,
thing
right.
with emotional
You know?
intelligence. You pick up on it quickly
Yeah,
who to sit.
you're
Yeah.
gonna look at, who feels smiling, who feels welcoming, and
Yeah.
also again going back to I'm a big proponent of listening to your body. So again, going back to your body, what's your body saying? My body will put me in the right place. You know what I mean? I have to tell you a little funny story about that because I just recently was at an event and I was the last person to get from the event to the lunch following the event, right? And a big long table, like I don't know, maybe 18 or 20 women, okay?
Right.
Very intimidating, because I
Yeah,
was
I
new,
bet.
didn't know
Yeah,
anybody.
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I was like, "Huh, where can I sit?" And I saw a couple spots, or one spot left. I think somebody had their purse there. I wasn't sure if it was taken or not. But I saw one spot where I knew for sure nobody was in that spot. And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna take that one." And I liked that it was on the end because I don't, I like it. I always have this thing about being able to get up and get out, right?
Get out if you need to. Yeah.
Yeah, boom. So,
I'm there with you on that one.
speaking of strategies, like what's your strategy when
Yeah,
you go into
that's
this
it.
kind of a
Yeah.
situation,
How do
right?
you do it?
Right? Anyway, I sit down in this one seat and I'm a big believer in, okay, I was put here for a reason, And in my mind, I'm asking, why am I here? Why am I in this particular seat? I literally asked myself that. and the woman across from me didn't seem to be speaking very much, didn't seem very communicative, and, and then suddenly I don't know what happened, we started talking, right? I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna get to know this person." And, anyway, after some we start really connecting, like, and the noise
Oh,
is rising in the room, we could barely hear each other, but you can see that there's something going on with us
yeah.
energetically. And, at the end of the day, it ended up being a person who she was just I just as I said, I had just published my book. This woman just asked me to be on an author speaker series that they were relaunching at her center that she works at. I got a great connection out of it. She ended up joining my Global Women Club in Orange County. So
Brilliant.
both of us got it ended up being this talking about the symphony, like, here's where both people got something they were looking for, not necessarily
Yeah.
consciously in the moment,
No.
but environmentally, we were put in the right place, in the right circumstance where we could connect and have that. Now, had I could have looked at that table and said, "You know what? I'm definitely gonna take that place in the middle," but my body was going, "No, no, 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 you're not gonna go sit there, you're gonna be really uncomfortable." You may not have enough you may not feel comfortable with people so close in your space. There's nowhere to go. So, I think it all ties in together. I don't know if that answer I got off track a little bit, but I think it's good for people to hear stories.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, but also it reassures and reinforces people who don't always listen to their intuition to listen to their intuition and to actually try and just go with the flow a little bit and allow things to come in, because they're those that and then that's when those sort of moments happen. um Many leaders feel pressure to hold it all together. How do you help them communicate with authority without losing authenticity? Now this is an important one because a lot of people do lose their way.
I just have to tell, another story here. So,
Story time with Carla.
I had okay, so this is actually somebody else's story. It wasn't mine, but I have to share it because I heard it and it was so powerful. So this gentleman he is one of the top coaches in the world, and he happens to be one of my coaches, right? And
Excellent.
okay, and he came up in front of a room, and it was his first time where he was gonna offer his big program to, the room, and he to a big room of people, like, live. And so he does this whole presentation. It comes down to the part where he's going to talk about, what he offers, what kind of program he offers, and he starts to, do it, and he stumbles, and he stumbles, and he just like, he was doing a horrible job, horrible, right? And so, he actually broke down in tears in front of the
Oh
audience,
no.
and he said, like, what happened for him, it was so powerful because he did the thing he was most afraid of. Once he fell apart once, he was able to go forward the next time with, like,
Right.
more composure, like, so what I'm saying here is I think that sometimes we need to allow ourselves to, quote, unquote, "fail" in front of the room, fail as the leader, not do I say go forward imperfectly. That's one of my sayings, go forward imperfectly. Like, I've had interactions with people where I'm like, okay, that and maybe it didn't go the way I was hoping it would go. But what everybody I would love to see everyone. I invite everyone to do without being critical, look back on the situation where you think that you blew it and take the learning from that and see what you can do the next time to improve. And so as we move forward, how do you because if you're allow yourself to be vulnerable as a leader, yes, there's going to be some people who judge you. There's going to be some people who put you in a little basket and maybe they write you off for a while. But there's gonna be a lot of people who appreciate your vulnerability and your authenticity and what you're modeling, and it allows them to do the same because the people who bottle it up and keep trying to move forward despite what's going on inside them end up having those breakdowns and in not a
Yeah.
good way, right? So,
So here in the UK, we say presence over perfection,
yes.
And we don't say, well, people who listen to my channel and listen to the experts that have spoken, especially in series one, a
Yeah.
lot of the time they say it's not a failure, it's a learning opportunity.
Right.
And I love
Exactly.
that because if you are kinder with your words to yourself,
Hmm.
then you can be kinder to other people. So I love the fact, and I'm sure you're very switched on to flipping the narrative and making sure that, the way you understand what's going on is gentler than, say, the harshest critic in the room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're often harder on ourselves than other people are, you know.
Yes,
I mean, I've done
yes.
presentations where I was not feeling comfortable at all. Hilarious, actually. I had a webinar. I wasn't that long ago, about 5 months, 4 or 5 months back. It was new that I was teaching. It was a free webinar and I did not think I did a good job at all. I felt I was actually, I just felt energetically off. It
Mm,
didn't flow. I was, and
misaligned.
yeah, it just didn't feel, like something was just off. And it was really interesting. I had more signups for my offer at the end than I'd ever had.
Wow.
And the feedback I got from the people who had volunteered to help me was like, that was a great webinar. But it was just, I don't know, and I was just not in I just wasn't, for whatever reason, it was a great lesson for me to like go back and do what I do with clients too, was again, well, how can I reset my central nervous system, so that even when it's new material, I don't have that anxiety, when I'm putting that out to the group. So it was the best feedback ever to have people that was to contradict what I thought was going on because, and in emotional intelligence, we do this thing called a 360, which is a report. You take a test, and then that you have other people around you do an evaluation of you, and you compare your perception to what other people's perceptions are of you.
I love
And
that.
we
We
look
don't have that in the
Okay.
UK. I
Yeah,
like
so
that.
you look to see, like, well, it's something that you have to be certified in order to just to do the debrief. It's very sensitive, right? It can make somebody very upset. And, so usually the circles don't line up very well, people's perception versus
Yeah.
what's going on in the inner
Oh,
circle versus
yes.
the outer.
Yeah.
And, when I did mine, it was pretty close, like, what I thought of myself versus, so it was really shocking to have the experience in my webinar where it was so off, like what I perceived in myself and what other people perceived really was a huge mismatch. And I was like, it's interesting that I could be so there in all these other ways, but suddenly, here was a situation. It just shows you that we're always changing, right? We're never quite the same, you know. But I do want to say one thing here about the how. We've been talking about that a lot. And I think it's important to, some of this that I'm going to say for people might be a little bit of a stretch for you to believe. And it's okay if you don't believe it and you don't agree with me. I'm just going to put it out there though.
It's
So
fine.
if you
It's
if
fine.
you have a negative experience or something you perceive or
Mm.
as a negative emotion, the more you put your attention on that emotion, the more you're going to draw in more of the same. And I'm not telling you to be in denial about it. I'm suggesting that you make peace with that feeling, like not trying to make it go away, but acknowledge it. Take some time to acknowledge the feeling. And then you have an opportunity to because you have an opportunity to either stay in the negative feeling and create more of, you have an opportunity to potentially, when you get in the negative feeling, what happens is your energy is going down. Everybody's been in a room where somebody's negative and you can feel what that
Yeah.
does, right? So
Oh, yes.
you don't want to be that person, right? So the other thing you can do is you can visualize a different scenario. Like take yourself completely out of whatever that is that's negative and try to visualize something that's a positive and feel it. Literally feel yourself in that experience. You're on a chaise lounge in the Bahamas under the sun and the wind is blowing and you can hear the ocean, and take yourself into that experience. And then the third thing is to, uh, go be there, be with that emotion and choose to allow its time, So a process that I love to do with my clients is I'll literally have them put their finger on the strongest place where they feel the emotion in their body and just to be with it and not just keep following the feeling throughout the different places in the body, not
Got
trying to
you.
make it go away, not making
Yeah.
it wrong, and
So
and
that's how
then
they connect to it.
Yeah, they connect to it, but
Got
it
you.
also you've now accepted it, and now you don't it has no charge on you anymore, you know? So, this is a very powerful way to keep yourself in alignment.
So this leads us on really nicely actually to section 3, which is all about leading from clarity. So this is the heart of your work now. So this is the juicy bit, guys. Helping leaders shift from strain to clarity. So my first question is, what does leading from clarity mean to you, Carla?
Well, I think for me, a couple of things. One is setting my knowing where I'm gonna go, making a choice that nothing's gonna stop me, but being willing to adjust my, my navigational, journey, as necessary as things are happening, because what I see the biggest problem is when people are they hit some resistance in their vision, and then they either decide that they're not gonna continue pursuing the vision, they completely stop, or they don't adjust, or they do number 3, which is try to push really hard against what isn't working, right? Which again leads to burnout. So for
Yeah,
me, leadership is knowing when it's time to adjust, when it's time to,
good.
let it go, when
Yeah,
it's time, and also, again, going back to, "Okay, I'm having feelings about this. I need to take some time to touch into what's going on with me and see what's causing me to feel like I'm not in flow," because in
mm-hmm.
the ideal journey, I work with the map of consciousness where, anger and guilt and fear are all in the lower levels of measurements, right? They're the
Yeah,
vibration. And when you're in those lower vibrations, you're in a cycle of struggle. You're not in
yeah,
flow. And so the idea is, how do you move up the scale to a higher level where you start to shift into flow, and ease. You move, but the way that it works is people move from struggle to a getting by vibration to finally being in flow. And so, how do we take ourselves, you know,
yeah.
the flow?
So that leads us on perfectly, actually, to the next question, which is, what are the signs that a leader is operating from strain rather than clarity? Can you give me three?
Well, poor sleep, uh, uh, tightness in the shoulders and the neck, the jaw's tight, you're angry and you're frustrated. Those are some great signs. I gave you some more signs, but
Yeah, yeah, we'll stop there. Stop there. You're a mindful of information, but I think that's great because I'm getting overwhelmed now. I need to cool down. So brilliant, brilliant. This is the really juicy bit of the conversation. So this is great. I'm getting very fired up now. You work with the invisible currents underneath leadership, the beliefs, the fears, and patterns that drive behavior. How do you help clients identify those currents?
Mm. Well, one thing is when things are not moving forward in a way that feels good to them, it's first of all, um, taking the time again, kind of forcing them to sit with themselves and like we'll literally have a conversation, but like, what didn't feel right about that? Like,
Yep,
and does
yep,
it feel
the
like
right questions.
yeah, it's asking the right
Mm,
questions is a huge piece of it, and also drilling deeper, like, because whatever the first response is great because that's usually the thing you didn't think about the most, and I love that, and we can work with that. But there beneath that, there's deeper and deeper currents. So what we wanna look at is first of all, where are you butting up how do I say this? Where is your belief system butting up against what's really going on in the world around you? Because your belief system is controlling what your reactions are out there, what your responses. So if you're not your belief system, you're so ingrained in it and so embedded, and you're not allowing yourself to look at it or let it maybe flex it a little bit. You need to see if your belief is really something that you need to keep holding on to. A lot of people they fight for the truth, but what's the truth, right? It's a thought that a belief is nothing more than a thought that you thought over and over again till it becomes a belief.
So in series one, we actually talk a lot about foundations and core values. So if any of my viewers want to revisit series one, it will explain, the experts will explain that very well to you. And then that will revisit, if you revisit my conversation right now, you'll fully understand what Carla's just said, because that's how we do it. So that is perfect. That's brilliant. What changes when a leader begins making decisions from clarity instead of pressure?
Hmm.
What changes?
Well, again, we move more into flow. The
Mm,
team gets happier. Everybody gets
yeah,
happier. The whole
good point.
energy is different, right? Because people feel when people feel seen, heard, valued, right? That their responses matter, that their presence is important. Everybody's happier, right? Because who doesn't
Yeah,
want to feel good about what they
yeah.
contributed, right? So I think that's the biggest thing. And again, it starts with the leader. If the leader is willing to create that energetic coherence and take the time to, relate to each of the people on the team, get to know them, see who they are,
Mm-hmm.
where they're coming from, and also be willing to question, but do it in a way where people don't feel like you're accusing them or making them wrong when you ask the question.
So we are now talking about empowerment.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's brilliant. And I've definitely got there myself and everybody around me as well. So that's, yeah, I fully understand that. Can you share a moment where a client shifted into clarity and
Mm.
everything changed? I know I can. I know that
Yeah.
moment as clear as day.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you explain a client that shifted?
Yes, okay.
Let's do,
So,
let's do this. Story time. Come on.
well, this
Let's go. I
particular
love this
person, I won't
question.
even say what organization she works for because
No, no.
so I work with people
Use
sometimes that,
pseudo names if you want.
yeah, no, no, no. She's this person's it's a government position, okay? And as we know, that can be very trying on people because there are certainly more structure and limitations in those positions than anywhere else, and it's very hard. Anyway, she came to me. Her goal was to move up the ladder in her organization, and she had just come back from um, some time off, right? For extended time off because she'd been through a very, very traumatic situation in another part of the world. Okay. So she's coming back to this big organization. She feels like her reputation was sullied because of what happened at that other location. And there was some very horrible things that went on, natural disasters that she could do nothing
Oh,
about.
yeah, out of her
A team
control.
was brought in that took over, and she was sort of, diminished by it. So now she's at this new place. She has a whole new chance to start over. And during our first session, we were talking about, how does she turn her relationships around with the people in the organization? And I said, well, first of all, you have to recognize that you might think that the whole organization has this belief about you, but the truth is you only know that only one person there really has this, we know for sure, right? So instead of generalizing and thinking it's everybody, let's just avoid that person like for now. And let's go and my assignment to you is to go around and start to create allies in your organization. Like start to create friendships. Pretend you're the host of the meeting. You know,
Yeah,
go around and start to connect with
yeah.
different people in different
Find
offices.
your tribe.
Right. And so she started to do that, and I said, "And the next thing I want you to do is I want you to, let's get you into a place where you somehow are able to make a connection with the head of the organization entirely. Let's make that happen. Let's set that intention." So, pretty quickly, she actually within I think it was the first 2 months of our working together, she not only made friends with other people that she and suddenly realized she had all these friends there, like, people that she could relate to, but she, just peeked in on the boss one day to say hello, and he invited her in, and she ended up going to lunch with him.
Wow.
She's already been promoted, and that was like, I think we were in month 3, 3 or 4 of us working together. So I love that because and what her takeaway to me was, "Carla, my energy really is affecting what's happening to me out there in
Yeah.
my office." And I'm like, "Yes, exactly." And
Yeah.
it was just so real for her and so innocent, when the light bulb went off. And it's like I hear people say, "Yeah, I know what you're saying. I understand you. I get it." But a lot of times they think they understand, but until you see what happens with, I mean, she's not the only client this has happened with. You really see it in action. It's so mind-blowing, and it's such a joy for me because
Mm.
I love seeing them light up because now they're only, and she even said to me, we had a session the other day, yesterday, and she said, I'm just seeing now we've just scratched the surface of what I'm capable of." And I went, "Yes, that's it."
Mm. I think what I love about that story is, for me, the key moment is when she realized to stop worrying about what other people thought of her and
Yeah.
to worry about herself, because that's what everybody else was doing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that was the flick in her head, the switch.
It was certainly part
Yeah,
of, yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, great work. Love it. Okay, let's go on to section 4. Love that, Carla. Thank you. The future of leadership and women's success. Your work sits at the intersection of leadership, performance, and women's empowerment. This final section, we're going to start looking ahead. So I wanted to know, when you look at the future of leadership, what do you, this is you, Carla, believe needs to change?
Well, I think that this is really close to my heart, and as a woman who went through my own experiences of being very competent at something and being passed over for a promotion and having a man put in place instead of me
Right.
for a
Mm-hmm.
job, and then another situation in my background where I was the my boss was fired and I was put into his position, and I should have gotten the title and the money to match what he was getting, and I did not, you know.
Right.
Um, I come from that perspective. First, before I answer this question, I need to say that. So,
Okay.
I think that as women, part of it is recognizing that, when somebody passes you over, like this is a cultural thing we're talking about. A woman is passed over for a position. A lot of times, it's because it's been so ingrained in our culture for so many centuries that men are. I always say men have the confidence, right? Women have the wisdom and the knowledge, and what women need to do is move into the confidence piece so that we can start to change the shape of leadership and the future of leadership. If you think back on tribal societies, the women stayed home, the men went out and hunted and gathered, right? They went to get
Mm-hmm.
the
Yep.
meat or whatever and bring it back, and the woman would cook and tend to whatever. Then now we're moving into we're flipping the paradigm here, where women are now the hunters and the gatherers in many cases. And what we need to do is take ownership of that because that's part of stepping into leadership and we don't have to be aggressive about it, but we can be assertive in terms of holding our space, believing in ourselves, having the confidence to navigate where men are trying to maybe override us. I mean, I'm not bashing men at all, by the way, because but I'm just saying that this is the reality is we have to, as women, we have to, and it's happening, but it needs to happen on a larger scale. We have more women in government here in the United States than we've ever had
Yeah.
before. And I
And
love seeing, yeah.
it's similar in the UK with
Mhm.
our, obviously we have Starmer at the moment here. So most of his team are women.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we're now talking about feminism and the future of feminism and leadership as well, aren't we, with what you've just said? I think that's brilliant. Following on from that, what do you see women leaders redefining right now in business, in culture, in themselves? What do you see them redefining?
Well, I think the thing is, first of all, many of them are starting to understand that they don't have, if they're single moms, because I know a lot of them are out there.
Mm.
They're trying to, and even the ones that are not single, we're redefining how perfect of a mother we have to be, or how perfect of a wage earner, because it's really finding that
Mm.
sweet spot where
Yeah.
we forgive ourselves for not being first of all, for being human, right? We're brilliant at multitasking. Women are the best at it.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, I had a friend once, she was nursing her child, sitting on the toilet and reading the newspaper at the same time, you know? And so,
You should have seen
um
what I was doing earlier when I was trying to catch up on your new book.
yeah, so I think, the thing is just understanding that, it's first of all, because we are multitaskers doesn't mean we have ADHD, you know? We're trained to learn how to do
Yeah.
that, so that's lightening up on ourselves in that way.
I'm not gonna go down that route, but I fully understand where you were coming in from there.
Yeah, and secondly, just really understanding that, like, again, just going forward imperfectly and forgiving ourselves for our imperfections, and just doing our
Uh-huh.
best to recognize, like, when we've done a misstep, and making a course correction.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the bigger thing is, as we get frustrated with ourselves, to be super mindful that we're not taking that frustration out on the wrong people,
Um,
or people around us, because it really is internal, and really dealing with the energetics of that internal frustration, and healing that idea that we have to be perfect, so that we can move forward and create a place for ourselves as female leaders.
and everything you've just said there is really, really important. Really important. And it's coming from you, the leader of many things we've just been talking about, but leadership and emotional intelligence and basically changing women's lives.
Mhm.
So I hope everybody's heard what you've just said because that's really, really valuable advice. I just wanted to ask, how do you support women in stepping into success without sacrificing their well-being or alignment? So we're now talking about boundaries, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, super important. Like, one of the things I see over and over again is women who are my leaders that are stressed. A lot of times it's because they are not saying, they're allowing obligation to run their lives instead of commitment. Obligation is doing things I should do, I have to do, uh,
Don't want to do it.
it's my duty, right?
Yeah,
On somehow we got that message. I'm responsible.
yeah.
Moving out of that to a place of commitment. So that means we have to make some hard choices, maybe, about what we're taking off our plates. When
Mm-hmm.
we talk about boundaries, maybe you're not going to be going to, take care of even though you want to take care of your friend and help your friend with something or whatever it is, or if even sometimes a family member, you have to make some choices about what's really gonna sit well with you in the end. Because if you try to serve too many masters, you're gonna end up hurting yourself in the process. And so,
I love
super
that.
important to start to, like, the women that I work with who feel overwhelmed, 90% of that is because they're not saying no enough to the things they
Yeah,
need to. And you
yeah,
don't have to make an excuse why it's a no. You just need to be able to say no.
yeah.
It's yeah, go ahead.
I, sorry, I get buzzed. My head just goes, whoa, 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 I love it. I totally agree with what you're saying. It's brilliant. I just wanted to add that I've heard what you said so many times, but I just thought, do you know what? Why don't we risk assess ourselves? That's what it is, isn't it?
Mm,
If you think about your emotions and how you feel, what you like, what you don't like, it's all about if you take that on, what risk is that to me and my well being and how I feel? And I just want to say to some women, just risk assess. Say no if it doesn't feel right. If you work for someone and they said go and risk assess that client or that patient, you would do it. But do
mhm,
it for yourself so you
mhm,
can help that person. And that came through really strongly while you were talking. I was thinking, do you know what, Carla? We're so good at giving women, aren't we? All the time and helping others that sometimes we need to apply that to ourselves, don't we, really? What we're doing is just assessing the situation and how it's going to make us feel. And do we
mhm.
really want to do it? Because I think some women just take everything on and they don't think about the risks. How is that going to impact my life 6 months down the line? I'm a single mum. How am I going to fit that into my life? And you do, like you rightly said at the beginning of this conversation, you need to slow down and look at how your body's reacting, how you feel. And that kind of just brought it all back to me, that one comment you just made there. So that was brilliant. I hope that makes sense what I've just said.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing from my perspective, it's those are energy leaks. You can call them
Yeah.
boundaries, but it's where your energy leaks out. It doesn't serve you in the end. You may not realize it right
Yes,
away. It might sound cruel and harsh. It can be very hard. I mean, I will just say,
it is hard.
from my past, I realized, this is a simple thing, but some of you are going to be appalled when you hear this. But you know, years
Another
ago,
story.
yeah, exactly. Because stories really teach, right? Better than
Yeah.
sometimes talking. And I just remember, I decided I was getting stressed out over the holidays, and my husband and I would go overboard. It was not only financially but energetically to try to please
Mm.
everybody for the
Mhm.
holidays, and feel like we had
Yeah.
to get everybody a gift, and we had to do this and we had to do that. And I love doing it. Don't get me wrong, but I recognize
Yeah.
like, "God, this is so much time and it's such a stressor and it's not working for me financially." And so
Mm.
I finally wrote a letter to our families and said, "Look, we're not going to participate in the gift situation anymore for the holidays." And oh my God, what a disruptor for the entire both sides of the fence, his parents and
Yeah.
my parents. And actually drew a lot of criticism. It was hard, right? It was hard to,
Yeah.
but in the end, now they've all, after years, they all sort of say, you were right. Like you were right to do this. And now I see
It's
it.
get
And now,
Yeah.
and so it's like sometimes you just have to make the hard call and just say, well, look, you know what? This really, just recognize what isn't working for you, because that time that got sucked out of you for that you allowed to be sucked out of you is keeping you from, it could have kept you from personal care time. It could have kept you from something else that you needed to do for your work that would have helped you. It could have helped you. It maybe something for repair time with your relationships if you're in a marriage, because a lot of marriages go down because people didn't have the time or make the time because they were so busy doing all the stuff they thought they needed to do. So it's really about making choices.
Yeah. And also it makes it, once you do that, it makes it sustainable, which is also a key point, isn't it? How long can you keep this up for? Well, not long if I don't cut this out and cut that out. And it allows beautiful things to come in as well, I think.
Well, yes, receiving is part of the process because
Yeah.
as you eliminate things you don't need, and that you're creating room for the universe to send you things that you do.
Finally, we've got there. What do you hope women leaders carry forward from your work, Carla?
I hope that my desire is to see every woman out there who wants to be successful in her career and in her personal life to
Mhm.
be able to really honor what is going on inside of her and be able to have the energetic coherence where the external world and the internal world really match up. And she is making the money that she wants to be, if she wants to be financially independent, that she's making the money she wants to make in order to be there, and that she
Mhm.
doesn't hold herself back from what she really wants in this world because of any kind of limitation.
Brilliant. Carla, that is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant final words. Thank you for bringing your clarity, your wisdom, your very, very grounded presence into this conversation. What you shared today speaks to the heart of season two, that leadership is not just about strategy, but about practice. It's not just about performance, but about culture. It's not just about what we do, but how we interact, how we feel, and how we show up from the inside out. You've reminded us that clarity is not a luxury, it's a leadership tool. That emotional intelligence is not soft, it's essential. And that women do not need to push harder to succeed. They need to lead from alignment, from truth, and from the wisdom of their inner world. To everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this conversation. I hope it invites you to reflect on your own leadership practice, your own culture, and the clarity you hold within yourself. This has been continuing the conversation with Sadie. Whoa. Until the next time, take care of yourself and each other and keep reflecting, keep growing, and keep caring. Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you for having me.